So, Minecraft got a new snapshot. And they're adding in little things, but it's mostly just bug fixes at this point. And what that means, when a snapshot is mostly bug fixes, they're getting ready to release the next version. So 1.19, I think it's 1.19, it might be 1.18, but I think it's 1.19. The Wild update, if I'm going to take a guess right now, and I'm going to guess it's going to come out June 24th. So that's about a month, that's a little more than a month away. I'm going to predict right now that the Wild update is going to come out. But people have been asking recently, like, oh, with the Wild update so near, where there's some features that seem to be missing. Right? Like, where's the Fireflies? Because I am 99% sure Fireflies were in a Java edition snapshot. But they've never been in a mainline snapshot. And then there was also in the snapshot stuff, one of the things that they announced for the Wild update was they were going to be adding more like ambient complex biomes, including like redoing the birch forest or adding a new birch forest biome. And you know, they've been putting a lot of effort into the mangrove swamp, mangrove, and you know, it looks pretty decent all things considered. But that's been one of the right talking points. It's like, hey, you said there was going to be, you'd shown concept art for like a birch forest biome with like hollow logs and like new mushroom logs. Like, where is it? And so Mojang put out a video, which of course we can't actually see the dislikes for. Like, we can only guess at how many dislikes it has. I'm sure there's a behind the scenes way to look. But so I'm gonna guess it's widely disliked because in it it's like a Q&A with Mojang, and they say, let's start with the birch forest one first. They say that birch forest, while it was concept art does not mean that they're going to put it into the game. It's simply that, concept art. And after working on the game, they have decided that they're no longer in development of the birch forest. Right? Their ideas for the birch forest, it's just no longer in development. Concept art is not promise of a feature. So yeah, they've stopped developing birch forest. Okay. Then they announced that they have also removed fireflies from the game. Because their original idea was, oh, you'd have fireflies in the swamp, and the frogs would be able to eat the fireflies. But Mojang has since learned that many species of fireflies are actually poisonous to frogs. So they're claiming that they're taking fireflies out of the game because they don't want like kids to learn that like, oh, well, frogs can eat fireflies, right? It's poisonous. Now, this does have a precedent. Famously, Mojang had it so that you could feed cookies to parrots. But people told them, like, no, cookies are actually poisonous to parrots. Specifically, like chocolate chips or whatever. You know, chocolate, same thing with dogs. Chocolate chip cookies are poisonous to dogs. So, right, and as a result, they made it so that you can no longer feed cookies to parrots. They're stopping frogs from eating fireflies, I think makes sense. Again, it has precedent. Mojang is aware that a lot of, specifically with the parrot thing, they're aware that a lot of kids play Minecraft, and they don't want some kid playing Minecraft who has a real-life parrot and then feeding their real-life parrots cookies after seeing it done in the game. I get that. But one, it's a video game. But, you know, even with it being a video game, I still get their stance. You know, that's fine. But there is no reason for them to remove fireflies from the game. Because you know what they could have done? They could have just made it so that the frogs no longer eat the fireflies. You know, keep those fireflies in there for ambience and just have it so that the frogs no longer eat them. But no, that's not what they did. Instead, they just straight up removed fireflies. Again, technically, I think they were only ever in a Bedrock snapshot. So it's not like they were in. So it's not like they were in the game and then they were removed. They were only in that one specific version before being removed. But yeah, they just straight up decide to remove Fireflies because, yeah, they don't want people poisoning the frogs. The internet at large has been like, no, this is dumb. And, right, because they could have just made it so the frogs don't eat the Fireflies. Because instead, frogs now eat slimes and magma cubes. And that's fine. Because I think for a lot of people, this removing of the Fireflies is representative of the larger problems at Mojang. Like, there's the whole environmentalist aspect, which, again, they've said that they will never make, like, a shark enemy in the game. Because they don't want to use real-life animals in the game, right, as, like, enemies. That's why all, like, real-life animals are passive. And instead, if they're going to add any, like, hostile mobs, that's the word I was looking for, they're going to make them, right, stuff, imaginary stuff, like wardens, and creepers, and skeletons, because guess what? Skeletons aren't real. Video game enemy. You know. But yeah, no, this removing of the Fireflies, and their reason, everyone agrees their reason is bullshit, right? There's no, you could leave them in the game because of ambience. It shouldn't be that hard to program out the frogs eating the Fireflies. Right, there's 1,000 fixes to this while leaving in Fireflies. So it's bullshit. Right? But it's representative of what Minecraft is becoming, because a lot of people this was before even this was revealed. A lot of people had already been joking that this wild update, or this is just Caves and Cliffs update part 3. So yeah, a lot of people had been joking that, like, oh, this is Caves and Cliffs 3.0. And yeah, them getting rid of Fireflies, yeah, it basically cements that. Like, everyone's kind of in agreement that, yeah, this is just Caves and Cliffs 3.0. Now, I'm not saying that, like, I know that is kind of an insult, but I'm not saying that to, like, discredit what's in the wild update. Because I think the new cities, the warden, all that stuff is pretty cool, right? I'm genuinely interested in playing with that stuff. But it's called the wild update because it was all about adding, like, wild to the game. Which, now we just have mangrove swamps. And the new swamps don't even have Fireflies in them. And then people are, like, pointing out, like, oh, this is just the next thing removed, or the next feature forgotten about. Both of these things, when there are, like, hundreds of other features that have also been forgotten about. I mean, who knows when archaeology is coming? I think they've already said it's not going to be in the next update, 1.20. Remember when a few updates back, when they added in all those new tables and whatnot, and they added in a fletching table, and say that, oh yeah, we're just future-proofing the game. Fletching table still doesn't do anything. How many updates later? And yeah, the fletching table does nothing. Bundles. They introduced, I think they were working on bundles in 1.18. Nope, still not working. Admittedly, bundles have a larger problem. This is just another thing done by Mojang that is just forgotten about. Because, okay, so when it came to Caves and Cliffs, the Caves and Cliffs update, when it got split in two, they announced the reason they were doing it is because they didn't want to overwork their staff, and they didn't want to crunch their staff, right? They didn't want to crunch them, they didn't want to overwork them. And I still think that's good, right? That's still a good reason. I would much rather have Mojang have a healthy staff in a healthy work environment than anything else. I'm fine with that. And I'm fine with that proceeding, right? I want them to keep that in mind, right? I think that's important. But at the same time, this is also the Pokemon dilemma. So the Pokemon dilemma is that Pokemon is the best-selling game. No. Pokemon is the highest grossing multimedia franchise of all time. Makes more money than Marvel in the MCU. Makes more money than Harry Potter. Makes more money than Star Wars. Right? highest grossing multimedia franchise of all time. And yet Pokemon games can't render a tree properly. Pokemon games don't have all of the Pokemon in it. The first open world Pokemon game was the most recent one. Right? People will point, and again, think of those problems whatever you will. Again, bring back the National Dex is not something I really actually give a shit about. But think those problems whatever you will. It doesn't change the fact that Pokemon games are kind of underwhelming, even though it's the highest grossing multimedia franchise of all time. Minecraft is in the exact same problem. Minecraft is the best-selling game of all time. It sold more copies than anything else, even Tetris. It's one of the biggest games ever. And yet their updates just kind of feel so small in comparison. Especially when you look at it from what modders do. Modders within a day, when they were doing the mob vote, within a day of the mob vote being announced, people had working mods that added the Copper Golem, that added the Allay, that added the third thing that's name I don't remember. All of those were in the game with mods within a day. And yet the Mojang developers can only add in one of them. And now, part of me gets it. Because modders only have to worry about Java Edition. And if their mod has bugs, no big deal. Right? They're allowed to. It's a mod. Mojang has to make sure their game doesn't have bugs. And they have to develop it for 2 versions for PC. A version for Xbox, a version for PlayStation, a version for Switch, and a version for mobile phones. They have to make sure all of those versions work. So, I get that. And they can't, the more bugs they have, the more people will, turn against them. Right? They can't, mods can have all the bugs in the world. Okay, they shouldn't, brick your game, but you know what I mean. Mods are allowed to have bugs. People are far more forgiving for mods. And, I don't know how big of staff Mojang is. I know when it comes to the Pokemon Company, part of the reason people one of the big complaints brought up during Gen 7 or Gen 8, all the controversies, was that the Pokemon Company for the mainline Pokemon games has a staff of about 50 people. Right? So there were about 50 people working on Sword and Shield. You know what other game had 50 people working on it? Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And those games are immaculate. Those games have so much going on in them. And yet Pokemon, with a higher budget, backed by the highest grossing franchise of all time, can barely render a tree, whereas Xenoblade Chronicles can create these mystical open worlds filled with so much. And again, development teams of the same size and about the same development timeline. And Mojang is kind of facing that same problem. I don't know how large the Mojang staff is, but they're the highest grossing game of all time. That, if both these things are 2 of the highest grossing things of all time, they could have bigger scopes. They could do greater things. But no, they can't even add Fireflies to Minecraft. And there's one other problem it shares with Pokemon. And I've been thinking about, this specifically the bundles made me think of this. In Minecraft, you had these bundles. And because one of the big problems with Minecraft is that there's not enough inventory space. That the more blocks they add to the game, the more things that players need to hold on to explore the world, the more messed up their inventory becomes. It's they added a new enchantment to the game. That was Swift Sneak. And originally it was a shoe enchantment. But they already had the Soul Walker one, which was also a shoe enchantment. So you know what they did? They made Swift Sneak a leg enchantment, just so that you could so that way you couldn't have so that way you could have more space for other enchantments. Right? They specifically changed it. Because you only have so many items you can hold on to. And plus there are things like Elytra, so that way you can't wear a chest plate. There's the turtle helmet thing, which is a whole other thing to get into. But yeah, Minecraft has an inventory problem. Mojang acknowledges it. And so as a solution, instead of adding more inventory slots, they create the bundles. And the bundles are supposed to be the solution to this inventory problem. But the bundles, they're not in the game, and they're not, even though they've been in development for like a year now, they're not in the next update, and who knows when they'll be out, because they're trying to solve a problem by giving you these bundles that will hold all the small stuff. But it just doesn't work, because it's not actually solving the problem. Instead, it's creating a new problem. And you know what would actually solve the problem? Adding more inventory slots. But they can't do that because that changes what Minecraft is. Or at least there's this perception that that changes like what Minecraft is. And you know who else has that exact same problem? The Pokémon Company. When developing more recent Pokémon games, the Pokémon Company has been like, hey, what if we make some changes? Like, I guess when working on Gen 8, they considered removing turn-based combat. But the development staff pushed back against it, specifically the younger ones. So when developing Breath of the Wild, Nintendo brought in a bunch of young developers who could breathe life into the Zelda franchise and add new and interesting things, which got us Breath of the Wild, right? With all these new and interesting things. Pokemon tried to replicate that, but instead all these new younger staff members were like, no, we can't get rid of turn-based battling, because that's how Pokemon is. That's how Pokemon has always worked. Right? Like, they couldn't change... That's why a lot of people have problems with Gen 8, is that Pokemon, they think Gen 8 plays it too safe. And it does play it too safe. Because that's how a Pokemon game is perceived to be. That's why Legends Arceus is so refreshing, because, well, yes, it still does have turn-based battling, and maybe it shouldn't have. It's fine that it does, but maybe it shouldn't have. They could have added in new stuff. They could have made more changes, right? The only one locking them to this is themselves. And yeah, this is a problem that Pokemon has, and this is also a problem that it looks like Mojang is having. Because they can add new features to Minecraft, but you also can't change Minecraft too much. Right? Like, there's only so... They don't want to change it too much, because then they might change what the game is. Right? Minecraft... There are, I think, 36 inventory slots in Minecraft. Right? You have your hotbar, which is 1 through 9, and then you have 3 rows above that. The only reason we have those amounts of inventory slots is because when Notch made the game, he decided it should be 1 through 9, and then just added 4 more slots. Right, or 3 rows above that. Notch could have, when making the game, theoretically, just been like, oh, what if we make the inventory 1 through 0 on the keyboard? And had 10 slots, and then added 3 rows above that. Then the inventory would have been 40. It's literally a completely arbitrary number. And same thing, he could have been like, oh, well, maybe the player should only have 2 rows. And we would still have 2 rows to this day. It's completely arbitrary. So Mojang is worried so much about changing the game because Minecraft is now this famous thing. They can't change it too much because they're afraid to, right? That, oh, people have these certain expectations and they can't deviate from that because that will change what Minecraft is. Bundles are not the solution. You know what would be the solution? Giving you an item that will allow you to add new inventory slots. Giving you another row, while it wouldn't, like, totally fix everything, it would help a lot. It really would. Even adding, like, 6 inventory slots on each side would do a world of wonder. So adding 12 more slots, that would be fantastic. But no, they're worried it's going to change too much about Minecraft is, because a decade plus ago, Notch just randomly decided to make it that. I mean, the reasoning makes enough sense, but it also... there's no reason it couldn't be changed. Oh, we actually won that round. And yeah, it highlights that bigger problem in Minecraft, is that, yeah, now... Because the Mojang developers have said that they don't want to change the game too much. That part of them developing the game is finding that balance of adding new stuff without changing how the game feels overall. And I feel like that also becomes a problem with rewards. While I'm excited for this new Deep Dark and like being able to explore it, right now I feel like there just isn't a reason to explore it, because the loot you find in the Deep Dark just isn't interesting enough. Sure, the new record is interesting and it'll be a nice trophy to add on my shelf. The Death Compass I think is a good idea, but that's it. You can add more interesting stuff to the game. You can make these changes, break from the mold to make a better game, right? They're just playing it too safe because they have all these expectations. And the same thing is true about the Pokemon Company. They're playing it safe because they have all these expectations put upon them. And I don't even want to talk about like the whole graphics thing. That, oh, Minecraft and Pokemon have these lesser graphics, so it's like you'd expect them to do like these other cool and interesting things, and they just don't. Right? Minecraft is a 16-bit game at the end of the day. You don't have to have ray tracing, right? Like they were talking about adding ray tracing to the game, and they just couldn't do it, so they gave up on the feature. Even though mods have been doing it for like a decade now. Okay, maybe you know what I mean. They called it like the super duper graphics pack. You know what I mean, right? There's all these things, because it does also highlight one of the unique things about Minecraft, is that we see the development of Minecraft in real time as it happens. Minecraft is literally the only game I can think of that does the snapshot thing, where on a weekly basis we're getting new information about the game. We're seeing what new features get added to the game. It's probably not the only game that does it, but it's definitely the biggest game that does it. Right? And as a result, this kind of creates a problem of that when you're developing something and it doesn't work. Right? Like the bundles. The bundles aren't working, so they just remove them from the game. But people still expect the bundles at some point because they were in the snapshots and whatnot. And that might be what's happening with the Birch Forest. They've been working on the Birch Forest in the background, and even though it hasn't been any snapshots, they've been working on it, and it just hasn't been working out, so as a result, they've canceled it. It makes me think of a story on No Man's Skies. On the development of No Man's Skies, while the game was in development, they had it so that the planets would rotate. So this was a feature they had promised, and they had it working in the game. So like you could take off from the planet, stay at the same point, and then land back on the planet, and you'd land at a different spot because the planet would rotate beneath you. They had it working in the game, but in the final release of the game, that's not there, because during beta testing, people found it confusing, because, right, taking off and then trying to land back on the same spot, and you were just somewhere completely different, right, that just didn't gel with players. It confused them. So they took it out of the game. But that was added in the lists of things people complained about from No Man's Skies, even though it was a feature that just straight up, it was in the game, it just didn't, right, it didn't gel well with players. It didn't make the gameplay better, so they took it out. But people still held it against the game. Statistically, there is someone who still complains about it to this day. Even though they know that it makes the game more confusing, they'd rather have it in there because Sean Murray promised it. And maybe that's what happened with the Birch Forest. Maybe they had these ideas for like new features, and then so they announced like they were working on the Birch Forest, and then those features didn't work out, so they just scrapped it. But because of how these snapshot things work and the like, right, we're seeing it all in real time, and it's because right now they've been working with these bundles, but the bundles just don't work. So we're seeing it play out in real time, how the bundles just don't work. So when they do eventually get scrapped from the game, that's what's going to happen. Right? That's just how I'm like thinking about it. Like that's what we're seeing with Minecraft's development, that is, in a way, wholly unique to Minecraft. So yeah, when these features get scrapped, for any number of reasons, we just see it as another missing feature. Maybe they had something planned for the fletching table that just wasn't fun, or that didn't, like, it just made the game needlessly complicated, so they scrapped it. But then that asks, like, why not just remove the fletching table? And yeah, fair enough. It's just the complication that is Minecraft at the end of the day. But yeah, and this all takes us back to the Fireflies. In some form, they had the Fireflies in the game. And then they removed them because they learned that that they're poisonous to frogs. But why not just keep them in the game anyways? It's 2 pixels. It couldn't have been... They had it working in at least one version. I swear they did. I swear they had Fireflies in Bedrock Edition. It might have been Java Edition. I swear I saw them. I didn't comb through, like, Exuma snapshot videos to look for it, but I swear I remember seeing it at one point. But yeah, because, of course, my hope with Fireflies was, okay, you've got these Fireflies, they add nice ambience to the swamp, but maybe you'd be able to craft, like, a special, like, cosmetic bottle that you then be able to bottle up Fireflies in. And I'm sure someone will say, well, oh, when you bottle up Fireflies, you actually kill them. And, oh, we don't want to spread that message to kids or whatever. You know, it's a classic image. There is some separation between video game and real life. And it would have been cool to have a bottle. And, like, the bottle could store more than just Fireflies. Like, you could make this cosmetic bottle that you could place down, and you could store milk and water in it. And maybe you could even store other stuff. Like, maybe it could be used to store sugar and wheat. Maybe you could put cookies in it. Right? Like, there's other stuff you could do with this cosmetic bottle. But then they'd also make it so that, oh, you can place the bottle down near Fireflies, leave it alone for a little bit, come back, and it would have Fireflies in it. And then you could break the bottle, take it over to, like, your base or whatnot, and now you have a bottle of Fireflies in your base. That would have been genuinely really cool. And that was when they announced Fireflies, because, you know, they're 2 pixels. They're just 2 pixels. But they could have cosmetically led to some great things. And now, because Fireflies are poisonous, they've just been completely removed. All those cosmetic possibilities, gone forever now. And yeah, I mean, they might have never planned, right? They never planned to add bottled Fireflies to the game, which I think would have been dumb. I mean, if you're going to add Fireflies, you might as well do the most famous thing associated with them, right? But it's just right. It really does point the problem that, or the position that Mojang has put themselves in nowadays with these snapshots and with how changes they add to the game, and that technically, and also the other thing we have to think about is that all these updates are free. Yes, I know Minecraft Bedrock Edition does have a store, right? It has a microtransaction store that has a premium currency. So they're still, if you buy the game on any console, they're still making money off of that version of the game. That hasn't changed. And maybe part of the reason they're not doing Birch Forest is because they wanted to move on from the Caves and Cliffs update. They want to start working on... A lot of people are speculating about a new dimension. And maybe now that they've broken up the Caves and Cliffs update into 3 updates, maybe it's finally time they start working on that. Maybe they'd rather, as a development staff, they'd find working on a new biome kind of boring, and they don't find it that interesting. So they'd rather revitalize their creative spirit and work on something entirely new. It's just... I know this past half hour, I've talked about a lot of different things, and I know it's kind of a mess, and my brain is kind of scrambled. But my point is that these Fireflies are representative of a larger issue in Minecraft, and while, yeah, them not being, I'm not going to boycott the game, I'm not going to I'm still excited for the Wild update. It's just symbolic that Mojang in Minecraft have put themselves into not an unwinnable position, But they've backed themselves into a corner. They're trapped in an RV. The DEA is right outside their door, and they have no idea what to do. And they can't just fake a phone call to call the DEA agent and say his wife is in the hospital. Right? They're in that corner, and that's not an option. And I didn't even bring up that Mojang / Minecraft is owned by Microsoft. And as a result, they have Microsoft's backing. So they could, if they needed like more money, they could go to Papa Microsoft and get more money from them. I didn't even mention that. It's just something to think. It's a lot to think about. But no, I totally do think they should add Fireflies into the game. Right? I want to be able to bottle Fireflies and add them to my campsite. That would be super cute. Alright, let's move on, shall we? So, what have I been playing? God, we're 2 hours in. I knew I was going to talk about Minecraft Fireflies for a while. I knew that was going to happen. So... I finally played Tournament